what's up guys, it's Tyson back with another video, and we're about 10 days away from the Tower of Fantasy global release. And so I thought to myself, why not make a character tier list for all the characters in Tower of Fantasy? But this isn't just your regular tier list. Over the past couple of days, I've been researching on all the characters of Tower of Fantasy, looking through guides, to make sure that I could bring you guys the best possible information. This tier list will basically rank how strong each Simulacra is and whether you should roll for them or not. I know I already did a tier list, but that was basically on character designs, not looking at how strong the characters are. Who is daddy? Kiss me on the lips. Good night. Anyways, on the strongest characters in Tower of Fantasy. So before I get into the tier list, I think you guys should understand basically how the power system in Tower of Fantasy works. Unlike other gacha games where whenever you roll for a character, you have to play with that character. When you roll in Tower of Fantasy, you're basically unlocking the weapon when you get a character. So you can choose whether you want to equip the character skin, but the weapon you get when you obtain the character is your primary source of damage. So for example, if I roll King, I will get King's skin along with King's weapon. King's weapon will be the thing that does the damage. Similar with other games, there are archetypes and layouts that you can run. For example, in Tower of Fantasy, there are 3 different weapon archetypes. The first one is attacker, the second is tank, and the third is support. The weapons you carry will dictate the type of resonance you have. For example, if you have 2 attacker weapons, then you will receive the attacker trait. The attacker trait is a primarily damage focused weapons where having 2 or more equipped will give you the attack resonance. This will give you a 10% damage boost in solo play and a 40% damage boost in team. The second resonance is the tank resonance. The tank resonance is a primarily shield break, shield/damage reduction focused weapons where equipping 2 or more will give you the tank resonance. When you have this resonance equipped, you will have an 800% aggro buff and a 25% damage reduction in solo play. And in team play, you will have an 800% aggro buff along with a 45% damage reduction. And last but not least, we got the support resonance. The support resonance is primarily a healing and buff focused weapon where having 2 or more will give you the support resonance. I know you guys love playing healers, right? Said no one ever. This resonance gives you an 100% increase to outgoing heals in solo play and a 200% increase in team play. The last resonance is the balance resonance, meaning that you will have 1 of each archetype equipped, meaning that you will have 1 attack weapon, 1 tank weapon, and 1 support weapon. This resonance will give you a 5% boosted damage and damage reduction when solo, and in team play this will give you a 20% increase to shield break efficiency and healing, as well as a 25% increase to damage and damage reduction. In team play, this will give you a 20% increase to shield break efficiency and healing, as well as a 25% increase to damage and damage reduction. Now that we got the basics of Tower Fantasy out the way, let's get on into the tier list. Which characters I think you guys should roll for. So as you can see below, we got 5 SR characters and the rest are SSR characters. You can think of the SR characters as like characters that everyone will get, like 4-star common characters. All the SR characters won't be as good as the SSR characters and they won't be that viable. They're still usable and they still do a decent amount of damage, but compared to all the SSR characters, they are definitely outclassed, which is why for the time being, I will put all the SR characters at C-star because I don't think they're really worth upgrading for the time being. And if you do receive an SSR, it should be a priority for all your investments. Man, it pains me to do this seeing Bai Ling in S tier because as we all know with the last video, I dig her character design a lot and I think she should definitely be an S tier, but this tier list is going to be based off power rankings, and because these are all SR characters, they will belong in C tier. It pains me to do this. I only play Tower of Fantasy and these types of games for the character designs, but whatever, C tier for now. On to the first SSR, which is King, Big Daddy King, or Budget D-Luke as everyone else likes to call him. King is a fire melee shield breaker / sub DPS, and when you unlock him, you will get the shield breaker weapon. As for his usability, he gets a damage over time effect at 1 star, meaning that you don't really need that much investment in him. All you need is 2 copies of King and you will get his damage of time effect, which is why you don't really have to wail that much for him. His pros is that he has a high damage over time on shield break and has an area burst with skills. His cons is that he is easily interrupted when casting and basic attacking. Since he has a lot of pros and not that many cons, I would put him at an S tier. He is probably one of the best DPS in the game, and since he doesn't require that much resources to invest into and is basically a good overall character, I would put him at S tier. S tier in character design, S tier in power level. What else could you want from this man? The next character is Crow, which is a lightning melee main DPS that capitalizes on backsteps. Now, I know this isn't a character tier list, but if this was, he'd definitely be an S tier. But let's go over his attributes first. His usability is that he's pretty decent at 0 stars, meaning that if you only have 1 copy of him, he's still pretty playable and has pretty good damage. However, where Crow shines is at 3 stars. His pros is that he has fast attacks, has CC immune on alt animation, and when paired with Claudia, he has a huge DPS ceiling. His cons is that he's very hard to use efficiently and that he's easily interrupted when casting and using basic attacks. The thing with Crow is that while he may not have as much damage as King, when paired with 2P Claudia, he has a very high DPS potential potential. I can show you a clip over here which he resets double jump attacks upon hitting a target midair. It looks sick as hell, and man, I love his character design and his gameplay. But compared to the King, like since he requires way more investment than King, and upon hitting like endgame level they're relatively the same strength, I would put him at A tier just because he requires more investment than like all the other SSRs. And when compared to King, for King you only need like 1 star of King for him to be insanely good, which is why I would put Crow at an A tier for now. The next character is Zero, which is our very first healer. The first 2 characters we ranked are all attack type characters, and here we have our first healer. Crow is a fire range healer slash sub DPS slash team buffer. As for his usability, he gets a healing orb upon dealing damage at 1 star, which means that he's pretty useless at 0 stars. His pros is that he provides healing at 1 star, and at 5 stars he provides offensive buffs and shields. He also provides allies damage immunity for 3 seconds upon ults. His cons are that he doesn't heal at 0 stars, which to me is pretty fucking weird. I mean, you're getting Zero, a healer class, right? And he doesn't heal at 0 stars. Also, his other cons is that he needs a lot of investments, which is why he's not really recommended for beginners. So Zero is pretty interesting, right? Because when we get to the very late game, he's probably the strongest healer in the game as of the global release. But since he requires a lot of investment, he's kind of really hard to play at the moment because, as I said before, he's useless at 0 stars. He's a healer who can't heal. Like come on now, what? This ain't Kaoru. But after you get him to 1 star, he does start healing, but where he shines the most is at 5 stars, where he provides offensive buffs and shield to your team. So he has a really good high skill cap, but he does require a lot of investment. As for wanting to roll for him, you would probably have to whale a lot to max out the account, which is why I would put him at A tier for now. He's like really good endgame, but requires a lot of investment, so I would put him at A tier. The next character is Tsubasa, which, if you've seen my other video, is my #1 waifu and what I think is the best character design in the game. Like once she shoots her arrow, god damn, that's fucking hot. So Tsubasa is an ice range sub DPS that provides offensive buffs for your team. She has a pretty good usability. She provides a team buff at 1 star, and the team buff is upgraded at 6 stars. Her pros is that she has a good dash attack and arrow rain damage, and has the highest charge rate against group enemies. Furthermore, she has a 24% all damage buff at 1 star and a 40% all damage buff at 6 stars. Her cons is that her basic attacks are weak, like Amber, am I right? And are blocked by other players. She is also reliant on dash attacks to apply buff until 6 stars. Tsubasa again is pretty flexible when you're trying to roll for her, right? At 1 star, she has a huge power up, providing a team buff and an all damage buff. And at 6 stars, this is increased even more to 40%. So unlike Zero, where you have to 6 star Zero in order for him to be good, Tsubasa you only need to 1 star, and at 1 star she will do a shit ton of damage. So for all that reason, she doesn't require that much investment. She does a lot of damage at 1 star. If you do decide to invest in her, it will be a good investment because at 6 stars she shines a lot as well, which is why she belongs in S tier. The next character is Huma, which is our first tank. Huma is a fire melee tank slash shield breaker and swaps between shield and axe 4. Her #1 pro, along with her usability, is that she is great at 0 stars, meaning that if you roll for her once, she will be very playable. Her pros is that she has a debuffer, stun, and damage reduction, and a taunt, and she has a decent charge rate. Her con is that her taunt and damage reduction aren't that valuable as opposed to using her slot for another weapon. So basically this is opportunity cost, right? Do we want to run Huma when we can just run another healer, or we can just run more damage, right? That's for you to decide. As for me, I don't really dig the character design that much. If she was like, you know, Bai Ling or like Tsubasa or Crow, that character design, I'd definitely run her in a heartbeat. But she is definitely free to play friendly because she's great at 0 stars if you only roll for her once. But yeah, compared to all the other SSRs, she is pretty lackluster and she's not really that good late game. The opportunity cost of running her isn't that high compared to all the other characters, so she's probably the lowest out of all SSRs so far, which is a B. The next character is Meryl, which I'm sure if you've seen the Tower Fantasy trailer, you've definitely seen this girl. Meryl is an ice melee tank slash shield breaker. She has pretty good usability because she gets healing upon shield break at 1 star, and her pros is that she's CC immune when using her skill and gets shield on ult. Her cons is that she has no shield break damage and she feels pretty clunky to play. It seems that all the tanks so far in this game aren't really that good compared to other damage and healers in this game. Like as you can see with King and Tsubasa, they outshine Meryl and Huma like a lot, right? Tanks aren't really that valuable in Tower Fantasy so far. I mean, I really like Meryl's character design. If we're just going by power scaling alone, she definitely is an S tier. For sure, if you want to run a tank, she's definitely better than Huma. But I don't know if she's like that much better than Huma where she needs to be in an A tier. But for now, I'll definitely put her in an A tier because as for all the tanks that we can run, she's definitely the better tank out of Huma. Hey. Follow this channel. Thank you very much. You see this channel as well? Follow that too. Next we got Samir, which I think slays the fuck out and honestly has one of the coolest animations in the game. I'm sure y'all have seen that animation with her like flipping upside down, shooting random lasers out her guns, right? It's just sick as hell. Samir is a lightning ranged main DPS. Her usability is that she's great at 0 stars, meaning that she doesn't require a lot of investment to do a lot of damage. Her pros is that she has fast hits, good TPS, and charge rate. She also has safe AoE aerial attacks. Her cons is that her final grind hit is terrible, along with having bad long attack range. So when you're playing Samir, you usually want to be really close to your enemies, and if you are really close to your enemies, her DPS is fucking bonkers. Yeah, Samir is a really good all-around character. She's probably the most free-to-play friendly character in the game, because at 0 stars, she probably has the highest damage out of all the characters so far. She also looks the sickest in-game, like come on. Like I'm a Tsubasa, Crow, and Bai Ling simp, right? But if I'm looking at the animations in-game alone, her animations are the sickest. As I mentioned before, this tier list is basically the strongest characters in the game relative to how much you need to invest, plus the amount of damage and utility they provide. Because she doesn't require a lot of investment and has one of the highest damages in the game, Samir belongs in S tier. S for Samir. Next we got Shiro, or as I like to call her, sheer ass, because come on, look at that pose. I mean, the pose is basically... she's posing like that, like what? So Shiro is a physical melee sub DPS slash shield breaker and team buffer. So again, there seems to be a lot more attack archetypes in Tower Fantasy compared to all the other classes like tank and heal. For Shiro's usability, she requires a bit more investment than other characters. She gets a free cooldown reset at 3 stars, and her pros is that she has a high burst with active skill plus 3 dash attacks. At 3 stars, she resets CDs on shield breaks, which benefits other weapons. Her cons is that she has a 60-second cooldown, which is really fucking long, and is really hard to use below 3 stars. She also has a low active skill range, and is basically useless if enemies are mobile. Her switch skill is also not that good. So the name of the game with this tier list seems to be, am I getting my money's worth when I'm rolling for these characters? A lot of these characters, if you max them out, will have a different tier list, but I know that a lot of you can't max out these characters, so as we can see with Shiro, she's basically useless if she's under 3 stars. There's a lot better DPSs you can run like King, Tsubasa, Samir, Crow. All of these characters outshine her, and she's basically only viable at 3 stars, which is a pretty hefty investment compared to Samir, which you only need to roll for her once for it to be good. As much as I want to put Shiro in S tier for that character design, objectively for this tier list and her power level, she belongs in the B tier. And last but not least, we got Coco Ritter. Coco Ritter is definitely a fan favorite among the community in Tower Fantasy. I mean, what could you not like about Coco Ritter? She's like cute as fuck, right? So along with Zero, Coco Ritter is an ice range healer slash team buff. As for Coco Ritter's usability, she gets extra healing and energy recharge at 1 stars, and her team buffs are unlocked at 3 stars. Her pros is that she's easy to use and gets damage buff at 3 stars and decent usage at early to mid game. The cons is that she needs a lot of investment to be good for late game. The name of the game with these healers, Zero and Coco Ritter, is that they require a lot of investment. Coco Ritter and Zero, they both function well at 1 star. They're both pretty unplayable at 0 stars, but the difference between Zero and Coco Ritter is that Zero is really good at 6 stars, whereas Coco Ritter is a bit weaker than Zero at 6 stars. As much as I love Coco Ritter's design, I think she just gets outshined by Zero in basically every single category, which is why I would put Zero at a B tier. As you can see over here, these are all the characters that will be released on the global version of Tower Fantasy. For a quick summary of this tier list: King is Daddy, Crow is Husbando, Tsubasa is Bai, Samir is Waifu. The last 2 characters, Claudia, won't be released, which is why I won't rank them now, because maybe in the future, when they're released in the global server, they might patch things up, right? I'll also be streaming the game when Tower Fantasy releases on August 10th, so make sure to check me out on twitch.tv/Hyacinth. I'll also be posting a lot more YouTube content on this channel, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out. This has been Hyacinth. Peace.